Two.
Good morning and welcome to the Rushmoor Labour Group of Councillors monthly update broadcast and online surgery. I'm Keith Dibble and I'm leader of the Rushmoor Labour Group and Councillor for North Town. And over the next hour or so, we will be on there.
Oh no, we've had technical difficulties.
Household waste recycling centres.
We lost you for a moment, Keith. If you want to, say that again.
I had an external call come in. Good morning and welcome. As I said, I'm Keith Dibble, leader of Rushmoor Labour Group, and will be the presenter during the next hour or so. This is the first of monthly updates from the Rushmoor councillors, where we'll be updating residents on the topical issues affecting the borough and their individual wards. This morning, we'll be running through a number of topics, including bin collection update, household waste recycling centres, leisure facilities, individual ward updates, charity walks, and then feedback on various Rushmoor committees that have met in the last week. But we'll begin by going around and asking colleagues to introduce themselves. So for Aldershot Park, if I start with Councillor Bridgeman.
Hello, I'm Councillor Cherrywood from Aldershot Park Ward.
And Councillor Mike Roberts.
Yes, I've just arrived, courtesy of the IT.
Good morning, Mike. And apologies this morning from Councillor Sophie Porter, who was out doing other councillor activities this morning. If we move to Cherrywood, begin with Councillor Christine Guinness.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm Councillor Christine Guinness from Cherrywood Ward. I send apologies as well on behalf of Clive. He is joining us. He's just running a little bit late at the moment.
Thank you, Christine. And Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, my name's Councillor Ashley Halstead and I represent Cherrywood Ward.
Good morning to you both. Moving on to Wellington Ward, Councillor Martin.
Morning, Councillor Martin from Wellington Ward.
And do we have Councillor Crawford with us yet? Okay, and I'll move on to North Town and ask my colleague, Councillor Austin, to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Councillor Gaynor Austin, North Town Ward.
And Gaynor and I share those responsibilities. So let's begin then with a very topical and at times controversial subject of the Rushmoor bin collection service. And I'll ask my colleague, or our colleague Councillor Bridgeman, to update us on that.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Well, on Monday we are going back to the normal recycling and bin empty collection system that we had pre-COVID-19. That's because a relaxation of the rules and more staff returning to work. So that all sounds pretty good. And of course, we had a couple of surveys during the summer, one by the Labour Party and one by Rushmoor Council, which indicated that people were quite keen to go back to weekly recycling for general rubbish, fortnightly collections of recyclable stuff, and some indication that people would prefer a cheaper or a free garden waste collection service. So everything seemed to be okay with everybody, or most of us got what we wanted in the first place. But then 3 days ago, many of your councillors who are on here today attended an online seminar from Rushmoor Council specifically devoted to this subject, and they had called in consultants to look at the subject and compare figures across Hampshire as a whole. Rather interestingly, 13 different boroughs in Hampshire and 13 different combinations of how waste was collected, how often it was collected, and charging systems. But the one thing that was clear, and it does worry your Labour councillors, is that we were being steered towards a fortnightly waste bin collection purely on the grounds that it will save money. No mention was made of the health benefits or the problems associated with bins that have been hanging around for 2 weeks. It was all focused on the cost-benefit analysis, and of the 3 options we were given, it was made clear to us that the best one, we weren't told that this is what we were going to do, but it was quite clear that it was being made clear to us that the fortnightly bin collection was the best one. Now, we know that you, the member of the public, don't want that. You're quite happy with a weekly bin collection. And the Labour group will, of course, continue to fight to keep that service. But it does look as if we're being pushed that way. Let's put it that way. Okay. Oh, sorry. And one thing I did mention is that they're giving a serious consideration to a weekly waste food collection, because unbelievably 1/3 of what goes into our bins is food, and something like 80% of that food could be recycled. So there we are. Quick update.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome to Councillor Crawford from Wellington Ward. Alex, your view on this?
Yeah, sure. I guess mine was having had the whole experience of being involved in rejecting moving to fortnightly waste collection a few years ago, when there was a pilot project in particular areas of the borough to see how it would work. And it simply didn't work in, for example, the Garrison married quarters at the time. Now, what's being offered this time seems to be a bit different. And therefore, when I had the opportunity to ask a question, I suggested perhaps that a pilot project would be a good idea. And the difference is that, as Terry mentioned just a few minutes ago, the food waste collection is an integral part of this, and that would be weekly. And so, since I think it was quite a high proportion of the actual waste that goes into the general waste collection at the moment is food, if that's being collected weekly, then the other remnants of the waste could be collected fortnightly, but it needs to be tested out. And I would be particularly interested to see how it would work in 2 particular areas. One would be areas like the Garrison, where people are moving in and out all the time. And the other would be in areas where there's lots of flats, because that, again, can be a problem in moving to that kind of differentiated system. So I'm not so sort of set on the idea of saying we've got to hang on to weekly general waste collection. If we have a proper trial, proper sort of project to test it out in different areas, and that proves successful, and that's what people want, I'm quite happy to move to that, particularly as it would improve the recycling rate. And this is a big factor as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, one of the issues that now is very much the top of people's agenda is the climate emergency. When there was discussion 4, 5, maybe 6, 7 years ago about introducing fortnightly collections, of course, the environment wasn't top of everyone's agenda. And 2 members of our group sit on the climate emergency working group, Councillor Austin and Councillor Roberts. So Mike, Councillor Roberts, what's the view from that angle on weekly or fortnightly collections?
Yeah, well, I take a slightly. Can you hear me? Because
yes, yeah.
I take a slightly different sort of new era view in relationship to what we should be doing. Not just because I've been up in the demo at Parliament Square yesterday afternoon, but it is. I found the figures which were quoted absolutely appalling. because you couldn't imagine people having to go through a selected version of dustbins to actually see what was in it. And it was just under 40% of what was in a dustbin was food waste. Quite honestly, this is absolutely unforgivable and appalling. And what they did, they disaggregated what was waste in all its forms as distinct from, and should one not have been in the dustbin in the first place, because obviously there is a big communication strategy which has to be held with people buying not what they need, but what they may think they need, and then chucking it out. But also, waste is extremely valuable. And during the lockdown, the biggest stealing of waste going on was cardboard, because it is the most valuable out there. And, if you look at what is the residual part of the waste, it is very small, but our waste recovery is poor. We've actually reversed, not gone forward. So this is the time, I think, for re-looking, reassessment of what is waste, and also going out. And I do take on board Alex's points about difficult areas, and there has to be pilot schemes in those particular areas. But first of all, you stop the waste in the first place. You stop the overbuying of food, which is not needed. You do the recycling of parts of that waste in composting, etc., which is what we used to do in the Second World War. Maybe we need to go back to the future, and you look at what the waste recovery situation can be in relationship to the design of products in the first place. Now, I'm a member of the Amsterdam Group, and the circular economy has been very much part of one of the areas which we have brought forward in Europe, and also the Scandinavian countries have also brought forward as well. In this country, we haven't got to grips with that, and we really have to. So from an environmental activist point of view, we've really got to get to grips with this. We've got to change in so many ways, and this is one of them directly that people can influence. And yes, there will be I believe there needs to be a restructure of how we deal with waste, but waste is very valuable, which is why you have a vast number of people rushing around picking it up, because the recycling content and the value of that content is very considerable.
Thank you, Mike. Can I just ask one final contribution on this before we move on? Councillor Austin, recycling data. Rushmoor sadly has an embarrassingly low recycling record. What's your view on how we can increase that, or what we need to do to increase that?
Interesting, and I think we actually will probably come on to that later when we look at the climate change group. Specifically the last meeting that we've just had. I think Terry, Alex and Mike have all made good points there. Just to point out that a lot of people are saying, well, my bin is certainly not 40% food waste. And I know that one of the things was looked into was how was that measured? Was it volume or weight? And it was actually by weight. So a lot of that food waste contains a large element of water, which is heavier. So if you look at the image of the bin that's sort of circulating, it's a bit deceptive, but it still is, appalling the amount of food that we're throwing away. One of the things we looked at in the seminar on waste services was the 25-year environment plan from DEFRA, and then the environment bill that's coming into UK law to deliver that 25-year plan, and the 4 priority areas: air quality, biodiversity, water, and resources and waste, which this would come under. And under that, food waste collection is something that we will need to be bringing in by 2023. Whether we bring it in earlier is the question, but we will have to be bringing that in. Other areas looked at are also garden waste, possibly being collected free, a deposit return scheme, for example, on reusable or single-use bottles, and extended producer responsibility, so getting companies to actually take responsibility for the packaging and so on that they are producing. One thing I should point out is that, as well as the cost implications of the different options, the recycling rates were looked at. And what surprised me slightly is that the option of having food waste collection alongside a weekly waste collection would actually not have the benefits to improving our recycling rates that if we had a food waste collection alongside a fortnightly collection. There was an improvement there in recycling. And I think that, I mean, actually I asked the question at the meeting, you know, what was the reasoning behind that? And it seemed to be that as long as we have the bin there, you know, to put everything in, we know it's going to be taken away in a week, there's less pressure on people to really think about the waste they're producing and how much they can improve their recycling. So that is certainly one aspect of what we can possibly do to improve our recycling rates.
Okay, thank you, Gaynor. So let's just clarify where we are. So as of Monday of next week, we get back to Rushmoor, return to the weekly green bin collection, and the fortnightly blue bin and blue bottle bank recycling collections. That will be fortnightly, and those that participate in the subscription service for the brown bin, garden waste, that will continue at fortnightly. So as we understand it, the consultants that the council are employing will be working with the cabinet during September, looking at the various options that was presented to all members, and a report will be going to the 13th of October cabinet meeting with a recommendation of the way forward. At that meeting, the cabinet will make their decision. So we, as the opposition councillors, will scrutinise that decision and the data used throughout that process, and we'll keep residents updated at every step of the process and all developments, because it's really important that residents' voice is heard, and we will take on that responsibility. But I think the message is not if, but when the collection service will change. And I had some concerns when I spoke informally with the leader of the council about a month ago, when he was talking enthusiastically about introducing a pilot scheme before the end of the year. I took the view that would be a backward step, because Christmas and New Year time is probably the one time when every household has maximum waste, regardless of whether it's food or packaging. And that would be a foolish time to introduce any pilot. But so that's where we are. So residents can be reassured that in our Labour wards, or wards with Labour councillors, we will be updating residents at every step of the way. Linked with that, of course, is the use of household waste recycling centres, or traditionally known as the council dump. There's been some changes there during the summer, and can I ask Councillor Guinness, Christine Guinness from Cherrywood Ward, just to update us on how that process is working. Christine.
Yeah, so they have made a few changes now and reversed the COVID restrictions, except for the booking system. That is still the same at the moment, but they are now taking all stuff, so even the stuff that you have to pay for, they are now accepting. They've also, their opening hours are now back to 9 AM to 6 PM. But yeah, unfortunately at the moment, they are still using the booking system, and they're still only allowing one visit per week. I have questioned why, and they've said it's still just purely because of the social distancing. I've also pointed out that Farnborough residents are struggling awfully to actually get appointments. But they've said when they've looked at it, It's Aldershot's got quite a lot free, so they are saying if you do need to use it, then try booking for Aldershot rather than Farnborough. And also, I have also found that most of my residents, when they've complained to me and said that they're having trouble on the online system, that most people have actually found it much easier to phone. So their phone number, because people are having trouble finding that as well, is 02380 179 949, and that's Monday to Friday 9 to 5:30. But yeah, Farnborough still seems to be pretty full most of the time.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I used the Aldershot Ivy Road facility yesterday. Booked it on, I think, Tuesday for an 11 o'clock slot yesterday. First time I've ever been there where there was no queue. You could just drive straight in and out, and it worked very well. So well that you can probably hear our dog is celebrating it at the moment. And I'd say, come to Ivy Road, but make a booking in Aldershot, then stop on the way back and use our excellent array of local shops and cafes, and spend some money in Northtown. That would be really good. Thank you, Christine. Another council facilities that was hugely affected by the COVID pandemic, and still it is leisure facilities. And after many, many months of closure, they've reopened. So can Councillor Clive Grattan from Cherrywood just update us on what is and what isn't open at the moment?
Yes, thank you, Keith, for that. Yes, I've spoken to them, and at this moment in time, the swimming pools, only the indoor ones, are open for swimming clubs and for teaching people how to swim, and that's all on a bookable system. The Temping bowling section in Farnborough is not open at this moment in time because they're having trouble about the distancing problem. Soft aspects like the school children's sections where they do these softballs and other players are not open. That's because of the distancing as well. The gyms are all open, and you can, if you, on the swimming part of it, when the clubs are going in for swimming, they have to come prepared, ready to swim and clean themselves and wash and change elsewhere. They're not allowed to use the changing rooms at any time at this moment. The indoor bowling club is not in use at this moment for obvious reasons as well. So at the moment, it's as and when you can go down there, and it's changing on a weekly basis. So the swimming pool is open, but the clubs in for training and for learning how to swim. The other areas, the gyms are all open, but they're all bookable and spaced out. And that's the latest update. If I find out some more, I shall let everyone know.
Thank you, Clive. And one of the issues there, and this is one of the why there was delay in reopening some of those facilities, was not just the processes in place for cleaning and behaviour as a result of COVID, but because it's an outsourced contract, there was lengthy negotiations between Rushmoor and the contractor over loss of earnings during the closure, and I think there were many hours of negotiations there, Clive, wasn't there, to reach a settlement, and that just shows you some of the issues that this pandemic has given local authorities. Thank you for that, Clive. But now just to have a quick update on key ward issues. And if we start with Aldershot Park, Councillor Roberts, what's the sort of the topical issues there at the moment?
Topical issues. There seem to be everyday issues at the moment. I think residents will be very much aware about the drug problem. We've even got a stage where in one particular road there's click and collect going on. You just couldn't make this up. I think it is the frustration which residents feel that although they're given loads of intel, they're naming addresses, they're naming people, they're giving profiles of when things happen in all the states, there's no police action whatsoever. And in fact, where some of them are vivid properties, there's there's little action there either. So there really needs to be a grip got over these particular matters. I think there are the other usual. Some areas are also poor as regards what people are keeping in their front gardens. Those have been highlighted. We've still got some residual aspects which are very frustrating in relationship to the sell-off of land stroke garage areas. I do notice, having been involved also with Sandy Hill as well, you get invited, to do these things, that the issues with regard to Dulwich are exactly the same as the problems we've got with Dulwich stroke the other group in I think all particular wards. And I was mentioning one of my clients, and unfortunately I've got vast numbers of them. You just meet them all over the place, and I was talking to her on the bus about her position in relationship to Aldershot and Farnborough yesterday. So as well as her wider issues, which have now been called in for a social services discussion this week. So I think apart from the usual problems with parking, indiscriminate parking gives, I think, people a flavour of some of the many frustrations which are currently going on, which local members are having to deal with. And as the days and weeks go by, we're not getting any responses from the people who should be responding.
Thanks, Mike. Well, police was on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, and when we get to that item later, we'll have a longer discussion on the feedback from the police there. With I know members asked many questions about drugs and other issues. Cherrywood, could we go on to Councillor Halstead? What are the issues in Cherrywood?
So I found that a lot of residents are currently complaining about noise disruptions. So I've been taking that up with environmental health, and obviously any other residents, please do email me. We've almost finished delivery of our Here for Cherrywood newsletter. We just got a couple more routes today, and we'll be out later today delivering that. But other than that, I think Christine and Clive got a few other issues that they've been dealing with as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillors Austin or Grattan, do you want to come in there? So not Austin. Councillor Guinness or Grattan, do you want to come in there? No. Okay, moving on to Wellington Ward.
I was just going to say, I'll let Christine come in first. Sorry about that, Keith.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Quickly.
Sorry, yeah, just to update on our Moor Park, because obviously our fabulous park's up and running, and our gym equipment. Our car park is fully underway, and they seem to be making some progress on that. It is due that on around the 14th, 15th of September, they will start work on our mugger. For people that don't know what a mugger is, it's a mugger area. And with that being built, the CCTV camera will go in as well. And then approximately 4 weeks after that, they will start work on our BMX pump track.
Yeah.
Yes, to follow on from that, Keith, obviously, like in every area, we're having trouble with litter and fly tipping, which we report on a regular basis. And to follow on from Mike's thing, activities with dealers around the area is very prominent. I'm happy to say we might be having a slightly better response in our area on that, because we do have these presents there, and they are making some progress on certain items. But we've had a few raids done as well, so that's improving. But it's an overall problem across not just the boroughs, but across the country as well, which is getting rather than, as you say, the click and collect systems getting more and more nowadays. But apart from that, we're going ahead, and at the moment, everything is, I might say, not rosy, but progressing.
Good, thank you very much. And of course, any residents got any questions, either send them in during the course of the broadcast, or contact your local councillors later. Moving on to Wellington Ward, any topical issues there? Councillor Martin and Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, sure. There's two particular issues which are being highlighted at the moment. First of all, yesterday we launched a petition which is to do with the extremely dangerous junction that has been created between a road on the Wellesley estate called Pennyfathers Road and its junction with the A325 Farnborough Road, which is the main road between Farnborough and Aldershot. And the traffic along that stretch of the Farnborough Road is moving at 50 miles an hour minimum. What's happening is that they're proposing that traffic can come off the Farnborough Road there straight onto this new road in Wellesley, which has yet to be surfaced properly. And similarly, traffic can try to get out off the Pennyfathers Road onto the Farnborough Road. Well, you know, I spoke to someone yesterday who said she had to wait for quite a few minutes as the traffic sped by on the Farnborough Road to take her chance to get out into the main line of traffic. And when we approach Granger and Hampshire County Council about this, they said, oh, well, it's not finished yet. We're going to have better surface. We're going to have traffic lights, and we're going to, it's all promises. It needs to be done now, and that's what the petition's about. We're trying to get them to act promptly. That's the first item. The second item is that next weekend we're due to have in Wellington Ward a litter picking session. That's run into a bit of a problem, which is now generally in your other wards in the borough, Rushmoor Borough Council is responsible for all the roads and all of that kind of thing. Unfortunately, in Wellington Ward, our roads are in three different parts. First of all, we've got those in the town centre that the council is responsible for. Then we've got those in the garrison, which the military are responsible for. And then we have those in Wellesley, which Granger, the developer, are responsible for, or the building companies. So Rushmoor will only support us in litter picking from its roads. It won't support us in litter picking in the other roads, which does create a bit of a problem for us, because how are we going to deal with the litter that we've collected? Perhaps we could try and book a slot in the tip. What do you think?
Just quick questions, observation from me, Councillor Crawford. I mean, in Northtown, we have not the vast areas of different ownership, but we do have lots of different ownership. We just go around and pick it up and take it all back to one central point, which is in a Rushmoor owned area. I mean, we start and finish from the Northtown base, and people bring back their litter bags and leave them there, and they get collected. We don't go for satellite collection points. We do it all in one go. Anyway, Councillor Martin, any points to raise? Obviously not. Moving on then to Northtown, Councillor Austin.
Keith, can I just ask that a question on the junction? Am I right in thinking that when you come out onto that 325 from the Wellesley estate, you can only turn left and go down to the roundabout? There's no right-hand turn on that.
Well, thank goodness for that. But the difficulty is getting out of the road there. And, you know, they point out, oh, well, if you're going north from Aldershot towards Farnborough, there is a sign which tells you can't turn right into Pennyfathers Road. But unfortunately, some irresponsible people do that. Surprise, surprise, because it's a shortcut for them.
Yes, you get told quite often from the traffic section that people don't take any notice of signs anyway. So
well, they shouldn't have opened it. They shouldn't have opened it until they put the traffic lights in place, if that's what they're going to do. I mean,
not until the whole road's finished. It shouldn't be open.
Yeah. Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, as a former chair of road safety in Hampshire, I'm appalled that they've actually opened it in the first place, because that road is incredibly challenging at the best of times. And I think the petition should say that they should stop the entrance and exit until the promised road safety measures are actually installed. And I think that should be the focus of it, because, you know, somebody will be killed. You know, you're right, those cars go at 50 or 60 miles an hour down that particular road because it's a straight road. And it's appalling that they've done what they've done.
It does seem irresponsible of Granger and County to open it before the junction is complete. So good luck with that, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Martin. Bringing us on then to Northtown, Councillor Austin.
Yes, and I'm sure you'll pick up on more things, Keith, because obviously we continue with many of these issues, the everyday casework and support.
Yeah, we don't need to write a letter every time we do some cases.
Every time we report a road sign, no.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, one of the ongoing things as ever, and I think this keeps coming back as our favourite, is the dropped water cover at the bottom of Canning Road on North Lane. I think we've updated again through here for Northtown that because they now they've realised at last that they have to close the full width of the road to do the work. There will need to be diversions set in place, which possibly involve Army-owned roads, which they are seeking permission to do. So again, we're keeping up the pressure there, and someday, hopefully, that will be fixed. I still manage to hit it every single time I drive down North Lane. Yes, picking up on the litter pick, obviously we have our Northtown litter pick booked in for the end of September. Can you remember the date, Keith? 26th, yes, Saturday the 26th. We have a meeting on Monday with management from KFC and McDonald's, who are hoping to help and support us with that. And the other interesting thing that I don't know if you're going to bring up separately, but you have something to say on it, is certainly the ongoing problems that we're having around Northtown with traffic on residential roads. That's parking issues, dangerous parking, and speeding and so on, and large vehicles going down small residential roads that weren't made for it. And so obviously myself, you, Keith, and Councillor Sophie Porter from Aldershot Park recently visited Waltham Forest to see some of the work that they've been doing, sort of Little Holland type work. It's looking at reducing traffic and increasing active travel, so walking and cycling, making streets safer for pedestrians and for children. And that was something that I know we've been talking about for a while with regards to some of the streets, particularly in Northtown, and have spoken to a number of residents who are very keen. So we'll be feeding back and getting residents' views on that shortly as well.
Thank you, Gaynor. Yeah, I mean, we've been lobbying County Council, Rushmoor, and I think we've identified a couple of areas that could be used as a pilot or a feasibility study before a pilot. And we are beginning to achieve a bit of a consensus there, aren't we? And one of the consultants or gurus on these low traffic neighbourhoods will be coming to Aldershot in September to see firsthand the locations that we've identified. So I think that's really quite exciting. Just a couple of other things. Councillor Austin has been working with a couple of residents over developing and expanding our Northtown Book Exchange, which is going from strength to strength in the post office. And as regards the future of the post office, Councillor Austin and myself attended a meeting yesterday with a major national retailer over the potential of relocating the post office there. And again, we're working with Rushmoor, the post office nationally, Vivid, and a national retailer to see whether that's possible, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that that critical facility is there with a secure future. But there's still a few hurdles to overcome yet. So
I could just
thank you.
Steve, about the book exchange. I forgot about the exciting collaboration with Morrison's as well, who have set up their own bookshelves to raise money for Cllrs, the charity, teenage cancer charity, and they are so yes, any books that you would like to donate to them also, and we're linking with our book exchange, so I will collect for either, and some of ours that we can't necessarily use or we rotate, we will pass on, and there are other hopefully exciting developments and things that we can link with Morrison's on.
That's really good.
So that's really
excellent.
Good.
Thank you, Gaynor. So two of our members are participating in charity walks to both benefit their own health and support charity. So, Councillor Crawford, do you want to tell us about your project at the moment?
Yeah, sure. To do that, I stand up and show you my T-shirt, which is my Prostate Cancer UK. It's got a logo down here somewhere. Prostate, oh no, it's the other side, Prostate Cancer UK. And what it was that during the lockdown, I was going out regularly for exercise and was becoming reasonably fit. So when I spotted this challenge last month, I thought, well, I'll have a go. And what it is that every day I'm committed to walking 11,000 steps a day, which is about 4 miles. And in doing that, I'm then entitled to ask kind donors if they would support the charity. And so that's what I've been doing. So far, I've done 5 days, and I've got a little gizmo, which I can show you, which is here. And this counts my steps every day. And I think I've done, so far today, I've done 6,657. But so I've got a few more to do today. So Jennifer and I will probably go for a walk this afternoon. But that's the principle of it. And it's I'm enjoying it. And I'm hoping that it will make a reasonable contribution towards the vital research and communications activity of Prostate Cancer UK. The big problem is that there's some 11,000 men a year die from prostate cancer, and many of them do so because they're a bit wary about reacting to the symptoms. And if I can be so frank, it really involves going to the loo several times a night. And if you have those symptoms, it's best to go and have a test, and that's what I did, and that caught my case early enough, and I had the operation, which means I'm now cancer free. So thank you very much, and I'm hoping that would I've given Ash the link, and I hope that you'll be able to put that out. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Councillor Crawford, and I mean that's really very good of you, Alex, and I know you've been through a tough time, but I think the good news is that colleagues on this call will all have bundles of newsletters that are still to be delivered. So don't be afraid to ask. You'll be pleased to know that Northtown has been completed. And Councillor Austin will come on to that in a moment, because I think she used that as part of her charity fundraising. So, Councillor Bridgeman. Terry.
Yeah, can I just ask, Alex, who's the donations being made via?
Yeah, sure. It's through Just Giving, and Hash has the link to that, which he can put up.
Yeah, I tried, Alex, and it was a very difficult sign-up process, which bothered me because I've used Just Giving before. Yeah, well, send me the link, please. And I'll have a go.
That's very kind of you, Terry. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Gaynor, Councillor Austin, you too have been spending the month walking.
I have not. I'm not as good at this as Alex is, though, because I was saying this yesterday. He's great at getting up early and going out, and is in that habit doing that and his daily exercise. So I struggle with it more to fit it around whatever it is I'm doing, and also fit it around the crazy weather that we've been having, that so changeable. Yes, so I have, sometimes it's been things like delivering our newsletter. I am trying to cover 62 miles for Refuge, which is the domestic violence charity where which helps out women and men and children suffering from domestic abuse, which of course you may know there's been a large increase in reports of domestic abuse during lockdown, and since the pandemic, people hothoused together under a lot of stress. So it's essential that people have somewhere to turn to for that help and support. So I'm not counting steps, and I'm only counting when I actually go out for a proper walk and counting it in miles. And not getting used to my gizmo, which is just my phone, which I usually then forget to set. And when I've been out with Keith, he always has his, so he can give me the details of how far we've walked. But yes, also done litter pick with local residents, going around, and yeah, a couple of nice walks. But I really need to up my game of getting out there. But we've had, yeah, it's great that we've had the donations, and I think they're really very much appreciated.
So thank you, Gaynor. And so Hash will promote both of those online, but if any residents are taking part in future on any charity events, please let us as your ward councillors know, and we can post them on social media and support that. But the good news to both Alec and Gaynor is that there is a community walk this afternoon in Cherrywood ward, about 12:30 for 12:45. And I think, Christine, you can tell us where that scenic walk will take everyone.
Yeah, today we're going down Lycops Avenue and the roads off there and the Grange.
And what sites will you be identifying? Letterboxes, I understand.
Absolutely. See how many nice red doors we can find.
Yeah, good. Okay, moving on then. This week, or in the last week, there's been two of the standing Rushmoor committees. The first one is PPAB, which I think is, what's that acronym for, Councillor Roberts? Mike, if you could just take us through that
yeah,
meeting.
The trouble is, Keith, we get into acronyms and sometimes we can't remember what.
Yeah,
what the thing
project is
for.
one of them, and a board is one, but I don't know what the other P is for.
Yeah, progress. Anyway, progress. Yeah. Well, we had this was a special meeting called to look at the first responses to the motion which council agreed in relationship to Black Lives Matter. There have been discussions in the margins between myself and the chair as regards how it should progress. But I think that, not everything's been achieved in the margins, but at least they've been amicable at this particular stage, which is always useful because it is an emotive subject. There has been a strategy which has been agreed at this, and I'll come on to that in a minute. At this point in time, I have suggested to our team that we go along with that particular strategy, but at PPAB we raised the 4 areas which were important that we wish to see some action on in the near future, if not at the next meeting, certainly by the meeting after, and if not then, we will have the right to review whether we commit ourselves any further. The 4 areas, obviously the council itself reviewing its own policies, because some of those policies go back 15 years, and of course the world has moved on a little bit since then. The second thing is about its relationships with regard to procurement, to make sure that the people we bring in or we currently have as, and Clive mentioned the leisure operator, that their policies will in fact comply with ours and be reviewed on that particular basis. The third is looking at the other bodies and organisations which operate within the borough. And the fourth one is looking at business, because we need to have a total Rushmoor holistic view as regards how and on what basis we do move forward. There will also be looks at the deprivation work, which is going to go on. Rushmoor has more than the odd ward or part of wards which are in the top level of deprivation in the UK, as defined. My own ward and the team there, Aldershot Park, is part of that. We will also be looking at the areas like education, all the stats and details which have come out, including some very recent reports in the last few weeks, have confirmed, as we all knew, that far from coming forward, they're going backwards. So there will need to be discussions with Hampshire, with the colleges, etc., and that will again feed into any discussions we will have in the other parts which I've highlighted. So it's a start of a process. I think there's a view that by some members of the Conservative group that this could all be dusted by May or earlier. The answer is, oh no, it can't, because these are very far-reaching and very focus-driven, and there's got to be a lot of work done in many areas, and they've all got to be brought together to make sure that the whole of what we do is focused and sings from the same hymn sheet. Now there was, obviously some controversy about what Black Lives is. Now, I was privileged to listen to Radio 5 a few weeks ago when the riots were going on in America, where Martin King, who some people would obviously guess is the son of Dr. Martin Luther King, and it was the run-up to the redo of the famous Washington March, and the equally famous speech that his father gave. And he was talking that, it is black and brown lives which need to matter. So I think there's a much wider perspective of people that we need to be talking with regard to what their views are, what needs to change in the borough and all the areas I've mentioned. We did hear from 3 community leaders at the last meeting at PPAB, but those 3 leaders are yes, one of them is a key free leader of the Nepalese community, which is considerable these days, but there are also other community leaders and other areas from people that we need also to have experiences relayed as well. And I think is where the focus from our side needs to be in the growing days and weeks to come. I think that gives people a flavour of where we are. If anybody wants to know what was agreed, but as I say, our views are the sort of remit that we are looking for, and I thank the work that Sophie is already doing in relationship to the work in relationship to schools, etc. That there's much more that has to be done, should be done. There's much more relationships which need to occur, but we need much more detail about what the full view of the black and brown community is. And I think that's the next point in line.
Thank you, Mike. Very comprehensive and articulate briefing on the meeting. I think there's been lots of misinformation and mischief making on social media by people who some should know better and some sadly don't know any better. I think that it will be a slow process, and I think it's really important that members of this group are at the forefront in driving that forward and dragging the council forward. Black lives matter because they matter equally as much as white lives. And people that make these wild statements don't appear to accept that all lives matter. If it may be a refugee trying to escape terror and coming to the UK, they don't seem to matter about those. But let's stick to local issues. Thank you, Mike, and thank you for our team and the work that Gaynor is doing that with the team on that topic, a very emotional but important issue. If we move on then to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which took place on Thursday. This is the committee that really overviews the working and scrutinises the workings of the council and outside bodies. And this week's meeting was appeared to be a very long meeting for those observing it, but there were two very important issues. One was the scrutiny of the police, the local police, and one was about Aldershot Town Football Club. So, Councillor Bridgeman, Terry, can you give us an update on the meeting?
Yes, thank you, Keith. Well, the second item that you mentioned, which actually became the first item, first of all highlighted an anomaly in the council procedures, in that anybody or any person can ask an item to go on the agenda. So this group, who represent a number of Aldershot Football Club fans, asked this item to go on the agenda on Thursday, and it was put on at the last minute, as it were, which wasn't very helpful. And it turned out to be a group of Aldershot Football Club supporters who wanted to discuss the question of the lease of the ground and issues around that. Well, it was a bit late because that's well in advance of negotiations, but the gist of it all seemed to be that they objected to the present board of the football club. The organisation themselves used to belong to the Football Supporters Association, but have been suspended because in their efforts to undermine the football club, they've been making a number of posts, and they have been suspended for some racist posts, apparently. Although when we asked them specifically, they used a sort of Donald Trump defence and changed the subject and blame somebody else for something different. And they wouldn't address that question. So we're very unhappy with this group, but I don't think it's going to make any difference because, as I said, the negotiations are well in advance. But the big item on the agenda, and this is why we really objected to them going on, was because we knew that the main item on the agenda would take a long time. And you were quite right, we went on, the meeting lasted over 2 hours, mainly because of the item with the police. The police were there to discuss a number of items of public concern, things like drugs and police response and antisocial behaviour and all that sort of thing. Gave a very good account of themselves and a very good presentation, and then answered members' questions. In some cases, answered members' 5 or 6 questions, which is why it went on so long. Upshot of it all was, of course, usual story: shortages of this, shortage of that, no money, no resources, things not working as they should do. We had one instance, I think, of somebody was trying to get hold of 911, couldn't, trying to get hold of 999, couldn't, and we were assured, well, this shouldn't happen and we'll investigate it. Well, you know, they may very well do that, but it's not good. That's like that are happening in the first place. Now, I have my own ideas as to what the problem is, and I believe it's lack of resources in the first place. Other members may have other ideas, but I won't monopolise. Oh, and the interesting thing was, whereas 2 weeks ago when Gaynor requested permission to attend a committee that she's not a member of, it was turned down. Well, this time Alex wanted to attend and speak. it was put to the vote, and all those who voted, including Conservatives, voted in favour of him speaking. So I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, I'll let Gaynor and Christine have a go as well.
Councillor Austin or Guinness, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, so the stats they gave us was that year on year at the moment, all crime's down by 1.6, and Rushmoor's actually down by 4%. Now, obviously, we know that there was a lot of time during COVID where obviously there was a difference in what sort of crime was happening, and so there are reasons around that. But really, a lot of it was concentrated, certainly from my point of view on my ward, about the drugs. Now, we are working really hard with residents and keep saying you must report everything you see. And on speaking to the police, they agreed and said it is working. And as we know, we are having regular raids over here all the time in our ward, which is really good. A lot of our issues at the moment we're getting from residents is about individuals that are smoking in their gardens. And of course, the next door neighbours are saying, yeah, I can't stand the smell. Now, the police have said they've got very limited powers on this. And obviously, you know, how do they prove, you know, they're not going to start raiding people's houses because they're having one smoke. But they are now looking at a new system that I asked about, and they have come back and said that they are looking at a final warning system where they will be able to approach the neighbours, knock on the door, talk to them and give them this final warning system. So there is something in action plan to happen for residents that are having trouble with their neighbours smoking. Obviously drugs, not cigarettes. Then really they were talking about the car meets. There was actually another car meet last night in Farnborough, and within 20 minutes of it being reported, the police were there and did have them disbanded. I think really, as this is turning into a regular thing, I wonder actually whether than just disbanding them, we should actually be looking at an area that wouldn't affect residents, that maybe this could take place. But rather than them wasting resources and turning up every other week and causing problems to residents.
Okay, again, Councillor Austin.
Yes, just to come on with the figures that Christine was giving there. Yes, we were told that antisocial behaviour actually has gone down by 6% if you look at it year on year. So although there was that blip, you might say, during lockdown, if you look at it year on year, apparently, it's gone down by 6%. And linked to that, one of the things that we certainly, I know, had been pushing on and that specifically had been discussed for the police to monitor based on reports from our residents was to do with low-level crime and increases due to Hampshire switching the streetlights off overnight. And although it seems that often makes residents, particularly those who maybe work shifts are leaving or coming back during those hours, feel uncomfortable, and there's a perception of the increase of crime. The review that's been done by the police looking back at I think it's 6 months since then, say that there's been no measurable effect on the rates of crime. Now that was taken across the county, so not specifically in Rushmoor. And by no measurable effect, they mean no measurable increase or decrease. So they're saying it hasn't had any effect. So we've asked those questions specifically and got them to look at this, because it has been raised as an issue, and that's what they've come back with. But I think it's something that we'll need to continue to monitor. Other issues brought up was speed watch. That's something that's been an ongoing, and we've definitely been pushing it here to get. We've got volunteers ready and keen and signed up in Northtown, certainly, to want to do this. And yeah, they've lost that. Their coordinator had moved on to another role, and there was no coordinator. Apparently there is now a coordinator, but they couldn't actually tell me the name at that point because they couldn't remember. So that's one of the questions I'll be emailing to find out who that is, and it's hoped that the scheme will be back up and running soon. Other issues were brought up with the town centre and basically antisocial behaviour based around drugs and street drinking, and whether the best ways to deal with that are basically being reviewed at the moment. There are different instruments that the police can use, and it's a matter of which is the most effective. So I think that was most of the. Oh, and another important thing, actually, one of the councillors asked about the increase, or has there been an increase or decrease in hate crime reports since the publicity around Black Lives Matter in particular? And apparently, yes, there has. There's been a 9.9% increase in Rushmoor in the year to date in reports of hate crime, and 13.7% across Hampshire generally. So I think that's something that we definitely need to be keeping an eye on, given the potential economic effects of the pandemic and potentially Brexit, which can have.
Thanks, Gaynor. Alec, Councillor Crawford, and then Councillor Grattan. You're mute, Alex.
Thanks. Although I was given permission to speak at this meeting, I never actually did so. And the reason for was that the first item was allowed to ramble on so long. These three people were allowed 3/4 of an hour, and there was no balanced view from the football club. And it just seemed to me this was completely wrong, this way of handling things. And so that meant that there was a curtailed time for the police, and they gave quite a long presentation. Unfortunately, as far as I could see, they didn't have the means to actually deliver a presentation. It was all verbal. And so, it's not acceptable. We need proper presentations that we can then share the data with people. At the moment, this was, and it seemed to me, and then when it came to questions, I think the first councillor who was allowed to ask a question, he had about 10-15 minutes to ramble on about all his 5 questions. And so the whole thing became long and extended, and the police got fed up in the end and they departed at 9 o'clock. I mean, it was just, anyway, I did put in my questions on the chat, but one of the issues that I'm concerned about is that we want the police to deal with antisocial behaviour and the street people who are causing disruption in the town centre, but I don't want them to be going into that without suitable personal protective equipment. And what I've seen is that they're expected to go down and interact with people who are potentially infected, and it's just not acceptable. So I wanted to put that question. What arrangements are there for the police to have personal protective equipment when they're dealing with potential problems? That was the first question. The second question was this whole issue about how people are contacting the police, whether it's 101 999, the Rushmoor email, or the Hampshire website. What's the data? Councillors on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee need the detailed data What is the response time on 101? Is it 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? We need that data, and then we can hold the police to account about it. Anyway, that's all by way of a precursor. The reason I want to be able to speak at this committee was that in later this month, I'm going to be a participant in the joint scrutiny panel on crime and disorder, which covers Basingstoke, Hart and Rushmoor. And so I wanted to be able to understand what the issues were in more detail in Rushmoor, to be able to raise those in a sensible way at that forum. And I would say to Mike on the drugs issue, if he's got details of roads and houses that can be drawn to the attention, we can put these on the table in the joint scrutiny committee on crime and disorder and get them to account on that, because at the moment it's all very vague. And you know, there may be, we may say, oh, we suspect these things, but if there's actual evidence, they need to respond to it. Thank you.
I'm conscious of time, and I can just say that Alex raised a number of points there, which, if anyone's, for the public who are watching, about internal council administration, which are valid points, and I think our shadow on democratic services, Councillor Austin, and our team that do the progress meeting on OSC should raise those, because I think there are there's a deficit there in the democratic process without having presentations or reports that you can share. I think also, and again, this will be meaningless to the general public, but the ability to ask questions on the chat and then you get told, well, we'll answer that separately. Actually, that isn't allowing that issue to be debated amongst the members of that particular committee or board. So I think there is having gone into the virtual meetings, I think now there is a good reason for Rushmoor just to tighten up on some of the processes. But both Councillor Grattan and Councillor Roberts want to speak. So Clive first and then Mike.
Thank you, Keith. It's a straightforward question, really. On the vast number of increases in police officers that Hampshire have actually engaged in, how many actual officers will actually be out on the beat at any one time extra?
Well, I think with 9 extra police, probably about half of one person over the whole of the north of the area.
Christine or Nadia, did they answer that at all or give you any indication?
No, I didn't get a chance to ask that one because we were running so short of time. So it's one of the ones that got emailed across, waiting for a reply.
Yeah, and those questions should be asked and answered in the public forum. That's where I find I get irritated. But Mike.
Yeah, just to answer Alex, amazingly, every single address and all the details have gone to the inspector in charge of Rushmoor, and also to Vivid, because many of them are Vivid properties. And I congratulate everybody who's put their heads above the parapet and given me that information about who's doing what. But nothing at all. So ask them a simple question, Mr. Main, a simple question. Could you show me all the evidence which you've got in relationship to all the addresses in Aldershot Park Ward and beyond prior to your meeting? And the second point, Alex, Keith, I've got a commute. I've got amazingly 2 other Zoom meetings starting at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
One on a group I advise on housing in London, and another one, not as I'm going to London at the moment. And what the hell was the second one? The second one is the co-op policy as well. So I've got a commute between those particular meetings, give them 30 minutes each, and then I've got to go up to London, as you do.
I appreciate your
okay. So I will bow out to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, I'm conscious we've got 2 minutes of broadcast time left. So, Councillor Austin, again, thank you for the very detailed response. And we've got to remind ourselves that these are broadcast to the general public and not Labour Party or Labour group meetings. So let's move on. 1 minute for Councillor Austin to give us an update on the climate emergency, but it's had a good hearing already, or airing so far. But briefly, the headline issue.
Very briefly, we had a meeting which included myself and Councillor Roberts on Wednesday, the 1st of September, which is the Climate Change Working Group. This group has been running since we, as a council, declared a climate emergency, which is over a year ago now. And part of the updates that we had one which was from Jonathan Baker, who works in the Insight and Engagement Group at Hampshire County Council, and that was around looking at behavioural insights on changing behaviours and how councils can encourage, as you were talking about earlier, people to change their behaviours, what they're willing to do and what they're not. So what behaviours have already changed, how much different actions can save in terms of carbon expenditure, the best way to communicate to people to encourage the change, and how many people are willing generally to take which actions. And those were based around water, energy and water use, sustainable travel, sustainable diet, sustainable purchasing and consumption, and also about increasing resilience to climate change and things that come with it, such as heat and floods and so on. Part of that, I mean, it's interesting, but if you start asking questions about how these things have been put to people, there are, it raises more questions, that people are getting the right information about what they can do, which can really make a big change. And of course, my other concern is that, no matter how many of us increase our recycling, no matter how many of us go and buy our bamboo toothbrush, which I actually have, and do these small things, it's great, but really we need to be looking at the big polluters. The other point was was an update on where we are, and both myself and Councillor Roberts were really, we brought up the fact that we should have been doing more by now. I know we've had COVID, but we've had, like I say, well over a year to declare a climate emergency. And, so far, some work has been done behind the scenes by officers to establish where we're at and to, look at options. But actually, we're aware of a number of smaller, easy changes that we could have put in place, and nothing has been done. So I think that's something that certainly myself and Councillor Roberts are keen to push on and say, look, okay, there are big projects that will take time, but there are many things that we can start implementing now. So that's just an update on what's happening there.
Thank you, Gaynor. And as we always say, as the opposition to the administration, we will judge them on delivery. And I think climate emergency, there is a distinct lack of delivery. And I know you and Mike will lobby on our behalf and the residents' behalf. So really, that brings today's broadcast to an end. Hope residents have found it as rewarding as we as local councillors. A couple of things from me. This week on Tuesday, we saw the launch of Greatest Hits Radio for Surrey and East Hampshire, local radio broadcasts from Manchester, Liverpool and Southampton. I'd be really keen on residents' feedback on that. Certainly social media is saying it's been not universally popular. And it was quite nice on Thursday to receive a note from one of the journalists, previously with Eagle Radio, now with Greatest Hits Radio, to thank us for the work we did on trying to maintain those local services. So please give us your feedback on that. And tomorrow, 11 till 12 at the Northtown Community Base will be the weekly Northtown Councillors Advice Street Surgery. So I think Hash will be posting or this broadcast somewhere, and thank everyone for their participation, and we'll do this again in 4 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for your work.